Emergency live hot take. Mondays we have hot takes in general. Today we're doing it live because there were bannings. 3 cards were banned. OKO, which I think everyone saw was coming. There were 26 copies in the top 8, I think, or 29.
Wow.
Someone counted 26, and then because they just didn't count that there were 3 OKOs in the Kethis deck.
Oh, yeah. The Kethis deck has a lot going on.
Yeah.
But OKO's legendary.
Yeah, so there you go. And then, so we have OKO got banned. That was kind of one everyone expected. Mox Opal got banned, which we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, exciting.
It's a big wound in a lot of people's wallets. You were mentioning earlier that of the original Pro Tour or GP, a modern Pro Tour Philadelphia.
Yeah. It's from an Ari Lax article on SCG this morning. It's one of Affinity is one of the only successful decks from the original Modern Pro Tour that hasn't had a card banned out of it until now.
Yep. I mean, right now, and then the last card we'll get into it is Mycosynth Lattice. You can see it over here. You should keep us open so we can make sure things are going.
Well, I thought we were trying not to get distracted by the chat now.
Not today.
Not today. We want to get distracted by the chat.
We are our own producer.
So I only see OKO. I don't see a Mycosynth Lattice.
It's gonna cycle through.
Oh, it's cycling through.
Yeah, I made it a
and it's over
slideshow.
here.
We got
Cool.
whole new technology.
Cool.
We're next leveling it. But as a hot take, how do you feel? How do you feel about the bans?
I feel pretty good. I mean, I think that OKO had to go, and it's interesting because I agree that banning OKO doesn't do enough to the Urza deck to really affect it drastically. I feel like Opal is an interesting ban. I mean, again, it might be Opal is dying a little bit for Urza's sins in the same way that
Bloodbraid Elf died for Deathrite Shaman, or
Bridge from Below
Bridge.
died for Hogak. Yeah. But I also think that Mox Opal has basically been on the bubble literally since day one of Modern.
Right.
They've made a big effort to ban tons of fast mana, including stuff like Seething Song and rituals. There was a period of time where people were talking about Simian Spirit Guide even being banned, and Mox Opal is just so much better than most of those cards.
Right.
It's literally turn 1, turn 2 mana that is also an artifact, so you can do stuff like Kethis combo with it, or you can find it with Ancient Stirrings or whatever, and you can sacrifice it to KCI. You can tap it to, well, I guess you can tap it for blue mana anyway, but you can tap it to Urza.
Right. Well, I mean,
it just does so much.
One of the things that I think is interesting is there are other cards that are on the ban list because Mox Opal was legal, and I think one of the reasons they made this decision is they're kind of sick of it, right? There's all these other cards that maybe Urza needs to be banned, but Mox Opal was problematic, and it has fueled multiple problematic decks in the format's history, from Eggs to KCI to Lantern Control to, not that Lantern Control needed a card banned out from under it, but it's not a healthy gameplay.
Yeah, I don't think that Wizards ever wants to be in a situation again where Lantern is the best deck. Because there was a very brief period where there was one Pro Tour, or was it a GP? I don't remember, but there was one professional level event where just a bunch of random pros showed up with Lantern, and they're oh yeah, it was the right meta pick. And I think that's really scary to Wizards. I don't think they really want the game to be in a situation where Lantern Control is the best deck, right? I think they're fine with it existing, but it's a scary world we live in if it's the best deck.
Yeah, and I think it sucks. I feel bad for every person who just lost kind of $400, right? That is a big hit. Now, I do think if you weren't going to sell it anytime soon, it does hurt from the side that you invested in it, but it also is a card that's been around for so long. I mean, you were saying it's been in Modern since the inception. You've had a lot of time to play with the card. It's not
and how many times have people been oh yeah, Opal banned on Monday, it's got to happen, it's just too good in XYZ deck? And that's been said for, you said, 5 different decks now, where it's oh, Opal's got to be the card to go. And
it's been on our if we've had, every time a card is banned or every time there's a ban season or moment, we have a ban watch list. Mox Opal has never not been on that list.
Yeah.
Maybe once, and it was not on the list more to make the statement that it wasn't on the list. Because it, for whatever reason, that season, no Mox Opal decks were good.
Yeah.
But that was because something else was degenerate happening, Eldrazi Winter or Hogak was a problem, right? So, but for the most part, it's always been on the edge, and they're going to print more and more powerful. They're just going to keep printing artifact stuff, right? That's not going away.
Yeah, of course.
And the more they print, Mox Opal is more and more problematic. And when you look at it versus other cards on the ban list, it's not going to look surprising. Now, the third card that was banned, Mycosynth Lattice, is going to be a weird card on the ban list. It's like very innocuous. And especially since Wizards has kind of did a lot of effort recently to get rid of all of the other, like, this is just a combo with another card pieces. Like Splinter Twin is still around, but Splinter Twin, people argue, shouldn't be on the ban list. But where do you think on the Mycosynth? I mean, obviously the reason it's banned is because with Karn, it's just too easy and too free to play and too powerful of a game state that you can put yourself into.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this before about, like, you know, I think it was like seemed like more of an issue before Modern Horizons gave like a big power infusion to the format. But like we've talked about the fact that the Karn Mycosynth Lattice win is just like a colorless win that can slot into any deck that can like reasonably hit 6 mana, which is, you know, a good number of decks in Modern, and like especially with Opal out of the format and looting out of the format, and like a lot of these super quick decks are getting banned, and they clearly want you to be getting to 6 mana. I mean, not necessarily, but like there should be a good number of decks that can reasonably get to 6 mana. It seems like, because they keep banning a lot of the like super fast wins. And so, you know, being like a colorless win condition that slots into any deck like that, I think is always dangerous.
Right.
And especially because Karn does so much more. Like you can play him on 5 mana and grab a Graph Digger's Cage. You can play him on 6 mana and grab a Damping Sphere. Like, you know, Karn just does so much by himself that I think Mycosynth Lattice just made for like an uninteresting play pattern where like the correct thing is to play Karn and the correct thing is to grab Mycosynth.
Right. And I think that
you can hit 6 mana.
I mean, this is what I was saying before these bans happened. Like, if say they had only banned OKO, or even if they banned like all the way down, because there was Once Upon a Time conversations, there were like all these new cards, even like Ren and 6 or what's the green one that counter spells?
Were people talking about Ren and 6?
It was banned. No, they weren't. Yeah. So, but my point is, like, you could ban every problematic card from Modern Horizons onward, and you still have War of the Spark. And I think, like, when we were right out of War of the Spark, there were 3 different cards or 4 different cards that were all like, are these problematic?
Yeah.
But by the time anyone got a chance to even try playing them, Modern Horizons came out, and like
and
they were
just
just
hit
like
the format like a truck, which was the idea of the set. So,
sure,
like,
good
on them.
But like, even if you banned all those cards, I was worried that Wizards wasn't going to remember, oh, War of the Spark was problematic also. And the fact that they banned Mycosynth Lattice actually makes me really happy because...
yeah, I mean, continue.
Because you have, like, if they just got rid of all, which is still miserable, right? You still have Karn locking people out of the game. You still have Neoform winning on turn 2. Like, I think that's less of an issue, and that's more of a glass cannon situation. But there are issues, and I think this shows that Wizards is paying attention holistically to the format versus just that, like, oh god, OKO's a problem right now.
Yeah, so I like it because I suspect that it was something, because it's a colorless, like, combo piece, or one card combo basically, because it's colorless and you could just slot it in any deck. And before Modern Horizons and before Hogak, we were seeing like Devoted Druid with Karn and Ponza with Karn and Tron with Karn and
anything
just
that
like
can make land.
Yeah, basically anything that like could reasonably get to 6 mana. Like Amulet, we saw Amulet with Karn. Like it was basically, can you hit 6 mana? Yes, put Karn in your deck.
Yeah,
and I think that's a problem. So I like the Mycosynth ban. I think a lot of people are confused by it though, because those decks that are playing Karn do not emerge as the front runner from this ban, right? Like the Primeval Titan decks were already kind of argued to be, is this the best deck with or without OKO?
Right.
And it really doesn't get hurt from no OKO. Like now there were Simic Titan decks that were playing OKO just because like it's such a powerful card.
And
you might as well take advantage. Yeah. But like either Amulet Titan or the Simic Field the Dead Titan that doesn't play Amulet,
or Titan Shift, like there's 4 different Titan decks,
because Titan Shift is getting the new Dryad dude, the Dryad of the
one that turns everything into
the Prismatic Omen / Exploration / Blocker.
Yeah. Well, all 3 decks, because it allows you to play extra cards, right? So even Amulet,
it's so much better in Valakut than any other deck, though.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to kill a turn faster and lets you play extra lands. And
I've also seen people talking of just playing it in the Field of the Dead decks, but putting 1 or 2 Valakuts in there, or like one Valakut
like
and playing this guy, because you don't
condition.
need any mountains. You just need this guy in play. So at that point, who cares?
And I've seen takes where people are like, is the best version of Valakut one with no mountains in the deck?
Right. And maybe with both, like, because you can even play
and
both
Once
cards.
Upon a Time allows you to have the consistency to find Titan, to find this card, to find Arboreal Grazer, like whatever you need to like go off, you're gonna find it.
Right.
So, I think like Once Upon a Time in my mind did have a target on its back because it's lending these Titan decks such huge consistency, and it contributes to deck like Neoform that kind of like fell out of favor because like putting a Greasel Band into play that turns into an elk is not that impressive. But like now it is much more impressive, right? So
I think one of the things that hurt Mycosynth Lattice too is that Karn decks running Mycosynth Lattice were showing up this weekend. Like if you look at the top 8 from this last
that's true. There was
GP,
a Ponza deck.
Right. So like with that in mind, they're like, oh, this is good without these cards. With these cards, if we get rid of the cards that are like somewhat maybe even keeping it in check, it's still a problem. So let's just get rid of it now instead of having to like deal with it. Now, that does get me to the point of asking, are we done with bans in Modern for a while? And do you think that there are other cards that people should be keeping an eye out in the near future?
I mean, I guess one more point about Mycosynth Lattice is like people were surprised because it wasn't imminent, but it was something that I think was not going to be healthy like ever in the very long term. And so I think Wizards was like, we're banning a bunch of cards, we better hit it now rather than like it needs to be hit in 6 months. But
because it had the potential of also just like tomorrow becoming the best card in the format. And
I mean, I don't think that was going to happen. That's what I'm saying is that's why it caught people off guard, because I don't think that Karn does become the best card in the format tomorrow. But I do think that it's just something that's like never going to be appropriate for the format. Just having a 4-mana colorless win condition that can slot into any deck.
And I think the longer you wait, the more expensive it becomes. I mean, they're never going to acknowledge the format, right? But like Mycosynth Lattice becomes more and more relevant the more time goes on if it stays legal. And the more relevant, it's an old card. They probably don't have plans to reprint it anytime soon. Cause
you do only ever need one, though.
You only need one, yeah. But it went from being like a $20 to $30 card to a $60 card.
Karn the Great Creator, though, as War of the Spark goes out of print, becomes more expensive, I think.
And so people invest in that card.
It becomes more expensive, then people are leaning a lot more on Mycosynth. Now, I don't think Karn is dead. I think that there can still be Karn decks that are using it to search for sideboard pieces, to search for combo pieces. Perhaps these Urza decks in the future are playing Thopter Sword again, and you want to put one Thopter Foundry in the board to like grab your hate piece. And, you know, like there's cool stuff you can do with Karn. You can do liquid metal coating, destroy lands. I don't think Karn is dead now.
Yeah. I think
he definitely would have taken a huge price hit if they ban this next year and he was, you know, $40, right?
Right. Well, and like I think that's smart, right? Like I'd rather Wizards be proactive, knowing like this is going to be a problem eventually, no matter what we do.
Yeah.
And let's just get rid of it now before it is that, and we don't lose too much clout since we're banning these other two cards that were much more prevalent.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think as far as like what are we looking at on the ban list in the future, so I think that Field of the Dead is maybe not a card that gets banned, but I think it represents a huge problem for the format because it's extremely difficult to interact with, and like it makes it very hard to beat these Primeval Titan decks as a control deck like ever. And the reason that it got banned in Standard is because that's what we were seeing. It was like the Golos deck was obviously very good, but like the decks that can beat it are just like gonna have to be super aggressive, because you can never play a long game against Field of the Dead. And that was, you know, that was kind of true in Pioneer as well. And it could be true in Modern. You know, I think like the fast decks are much faster, but I think Field of the Dead just edges out slow decks like so much. And I think that's part of the reason why because the Urza decks had skewed away from combo towards like Urza OKO midrange. Well, and what's going to be good against Urza OKO midrange with a big handful of counterspells? It's Field of the Dead.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that people were moving towards Field of the Dead based Primeval Titan decks, is because the Urza decks moved away from combo, and they're like, oh, well, we don't need to just outright kill you now because that's more fragile. We would rather just like play this long game where you can never win because we're making 3 zombies a turn and beat it.
Right. I mean, I think that people have like, we're talking even before this ban happened that Primeval Titan was high on the list, right? And I think Once Upon a Time is another card that's high on the list. And I guess like the third card for me, and that's mostly just after this year of Faithless Looting and Opal being banned, is kind of the third card that's always sat on that edge for me is Ancestral Visions, right? No.
The one that draws 3 cards?
No. Visions.
Oh, Ancient Stirrings.
Ancient Stirrings. Thank
Sure.
you. Ancient Stirrings, which I would be glad to see go away because I can never remember the name of the card, making my life easier. But I think with Ancient Stirrings being the one of like the Faithless Looting, the cantrips that are better than blue cards, and Once Upon a Time also being one of those things, those are 3 cards that I think I would maybe put a target out. Now, with Ancient Stirrings being around, but Mox Opal being gone, most of the decks that were playing Ancient Stirrings were playing Mox Opal, other than Primeval Titan decks.
And Tron.
I
think Ancient Stirrings is like low on people's radar right now because like the best artifact deck was often not playing it. I mean, there were versions of Urza that did play it. Some of them also playing Karn the Great Creator. But yeah, and like Hardened Scales is on the down low, especially now that Opal got banned. Like I think, like Ancient Stirrings as a card takes a big hit with Opal getting banned. Will there always be Ancient Stirring decks as long as it's legal? Yes, because the power level of the card is that high. But I think Once Upon a Time is better than Ancient Stirrings. Yeah. And I think that like in particular it's enabling these Primeval Titan decks. And if Primeval Titan turns out to be unbeatable because the fast decks aren't fast enough to beat it, and the slow decks can never beat Field of the Dead, or it's a slog to beat Field of the Dead, and we end up with like a meta where you're either playing Primeval Titan or you're playing Blood Moon, which I could foresee, and Wizards decides that they don't want that to be what Modern is doing. I think that I would want to see Once Upon a Time banned before like any of the proactive cards in the deck.
And I think that's one of the reasons it's fallen out of favor too, is just that it's such a better... There's a better cantrip out there, right, in green, and there's no reason to... And it's like, you dig for 5 cards versus 3, but the fact that it's free and there's so much more value-oriented, and it doesn't need to be colorless cards, gets you that benefit.
Yeah. And Amulet Titan had been playing Ancient Stirrings, and now, like, the Primeval Titan decks just don't need it. They just can play Once Upon a Time, and it's better, and it also finds Titan.
And that's kind of the point.
And it finds your early combo pieces, right? Because it finds your like Sakura Tribe Scout. It does not find Amulet, which is another reason I think that like we're starting to see amulet-less Titan decks.
Right.
But it finds Arboreal Grazer to like give you that boost of speed you need to win a turn faster. It gets you Sakura Tribe Scout or whatever. It gets you Azusa. It gets you any of the lands in your deck, which is what you were finding with Ancient Stirrings half the time anyway. More than half the time.
So what are your thoughts on Primeval Titan? Because that's the card to me that I think at one point I counted it, and like it actually was responsible. If you counted all the artifact lands as one card, it was responsible for like more bans on the ban list than any other card.
I think that Primeval Titan is such a tough card to ban because it costs 6 and it like kind of represents Timmy magic in a way.
Sure.
You know, like it's the one of the bigger like Timmy cards that gets played in Modern outside of like stuff you see in Tron, and it's like kind of sad to ban it, you know?
Right.
It might just be the card that has to go, but that's kind of why I'm looking at sideways cards like Field of the Dead or Once Upon a Time, or like things that make Primeval Titan a problem. Like I just feel like a 6-mana 6/6 with Trample is just like...
Yeah, but it's not
how's
a 6/6
that the
with Trample,
problem?
right? Like it's like a 3-drop that wins you the game as soon as you cast it.
Yeah, but like why is it a 3-drop and why are you able to cast it consistently on turn 3? That's more what I'm looking at.
Sure.
As opposed to like the actual 6/6 for 6 that doesn't win the game when you play it, right? Because it just gets 2 lands. How's that going to win you the game? Like, lands are the problem because they're hard to interact with, right?
Sure,
like,
but you're not going to ban...
That's the reason why I think Field of the Dead is more of a problem than Primeval Titan. Even if the Valakut deck ends up being great, or like classic Amulet Titan with no field ends up being great, I just feel like...
Well, like Birthing Pod just gets you 1 creature, and you have to sacrifice a creature. But like over time, it's such a value engine. Like, and their thought was, we can never print a good creature again without this card being a problem. We can never print a good equipment again without Stoneforge Mystic being a problem. We can never print a good land again without Primeval Titan being a problem.
But I think equipment and lands are like legit
worlds apart.
Yeah, like equipment and lands are something different because they're colorless.
Well, but equipment is rarely going to be too good because it's just as a card type medium. But lands from a power level perspective are good immediately.
Yes. That's
but
what I'm thinking.
I don't think
is
those
like,
are ever going to go away.
Lands are uncounterable. They don't print good answers to them in general, because like let people play their cards, right? Which I agree with, but it's like when you print a land that's like able to generate that much value or just outright kill the opponent, that's something that's dangerous.
But I think that's an argument against Primeval Titan. Like it's not.
I think that's an argument against Field of the Dead and Valakut.
But they're going to print more powerful lands forever. Like, for instance, Amulet Titan decks don't play either of those cards. Or they didn't. Like, Amulet Titan was a problem without Field of the Dead.
Playing a bunch of, like, bad lands.
Yeah, they're playing
like
bounce lands.
Commons. Slayer's Stronghold is where I'm at. You heard it here first. That's the hot take for the episode. Slayer's Stronghold is next on the ban list.
Well, I think you don't want them to print lands ever again. You're just done with lands.
Yeah.
Manaless Dredge only.
Yeah, that's right. We should all just play Hearthstone.
So yeah,
no
I don't know.
Slayer's Stronghold in Hearthstone.
I agree that getting rid of Primeval Titan would be sad. I'm been very high on the train of like arguing that Birthing Pod should be unbanned. Like why? Like these are just like dirtily fun cards.
I mean, it's because they both search your library that makes them a little bit more problematic because it makes repetitious gameplay as well. Where like Birthing Pod allowed you to like consistently execute the same game plan every game, and like that's part of the reason like Green Sun Zenith is banned as well, is because like it makes for like very repetitious gameplay where you're like not really responding to what your opponent is doing and you're just searching for your combo and you're winning. And Amulet, and honestly Primeval Titan does do that as well. You play Primeval Titan and very rarely are you searching for like a Bajuka Bog or something. You're just searching for like a freaking 2 Valakuts, or you're searching for a Field of the Dead and a fetch or something, and you're just like
The feeling I have with Birthing Pod versus, say, Green Sun Zenith is it's worse now than it was when it was banned. And part of that is just artifact hate has gotten much better. Like a Braid exists.
Kolaghan's
Command exists. And with seeing play, I mean, like, even with it, OKO being a main player in this format, Jund was one of the top 8 decks last week, and Death Shadow was a pillar of the format for the last 3 months. And
yeah. I mean, I think Death Shadow is still good. I don't know that it benefits from this ban a lot.
I don't think it does. I think it was a
like,
deck
it
that
could
was
hold
well
its
positioned
own
because it was good against OKO.
Yeah, it could hold its own against OKO was the reason that it was good. And I think it can hold its own against Primeval Titan somewhat.
Yeah.
The fact that Primeval Titan's key spells are mostly creatures makes their life a little hard, but
it's good against a format where most people aren't attacking your life total, and it can be the most aggressive deck, right? Yeah. And right now, if Primeval Titans are still that, like Primeval Titan wins. Doesn't matter what your life total is. Yeah. It's winning that, like, it's going to win. It's doing so much damage to you or doing so much of a value play on you that there's no way you're going to win regardless of what your life total is. You could be at 1 or 20. So that puts Death Shadow in a good position because it can be aggressive and get under it. And if it could just stop and a tempo play enough of what Primeval Titan is trying to do, it can get ahead. I think it's going to be... I am the most excited now after this ban to talk about Modern than I basically have been since October.
Yeah, agreed. Like, post Eldraine, Modern has felt very, like, sloggy. Like, yes. Even though there's been innovation in terms of these, like, Simic Titan decks and, like, you know, kind of the rise of Red Prowess, which I do think is, like, a very good choice. Like, it beats up on the Titan decks fast enough, I think. And, like, Death Shadow kind of, like, figuring out their place in the metagame. Like, there has been interesting shifts, but... yeah, with like Pioneer being new and exciting and not having OKO in it.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what decks come out on top. I don't think anyone's right. Like if Primeval, the thing with Primeval Titan decks being the best is there are cards that beat those decks.
Sure.
And before, those cards were kind of being hated out of the format because those cards were not good necessarily against OKO or Urza. And so you're in a position where you are going to be on the back foot. And now I think there's more of an opportunity for decks to just to kind of the metagame to figure itself out. Now, I do think those cards are the ones on the watch list. If I'm like investing in a new Modern deck tomorrow, a deck that's centered around Primeval Titan, if I don't already own all the expensive cards, is not a deck that I would be investing in. I'd be looking at decks that are not abusing Once Upon a Time or Primeval Titan.
I mean, if I was looking to like win an important tournament, I'd borrow some Primeval Titans, maybe.
Right. I would borrow, or like if I'm trying to win a GP or Pro Tour with or Players Tour with a Modern deck, then yes, maybe that's what I would do.
If I'm looking to build something new to like play local tournaments and have a good time,
I would look at Death Shadow. I think that deck actually is a really good deck.
Mono red prowess, if you're into it.
Yeah,
mono red kind of thing.
Mono red prowess is cheap. One of the reasons I do like Death Shadow, just going back to it, is like no card could be banned from it and kills your cards.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that Cold Snap someday ceases to exist. Like I can Thanos snap it out, and then you lose Mishra's Bubble, but the deck's still fine. You know, you don't need it.
Like, and even if they like ban Death Shadow, which would be very silly because it's not that good. Like there's Grixis control decks. You can very cycle that deck into a Jund deck pretty easily. Like there's not like all those cards are good. You're not losing value. It's not like some of these other decks. Now, and the other thing I would say is I don't think Urza decks are gone. I wouldn't invest in Urza decks either because I think Urza did, like Mox Opal did die for some of the sins of Urza. Like I think that deck is still good. I don't think that deck was like, oh man, I need one extra mana.
I think they move back towards combo now though.
Yes, I agree.
Like especially with no OKO as like a backup win condition that also like generates value turn after turn, so you can just like bury them. I think that you like it's much tougher to bury them with no OKO with value. I think that you are maybe back on Thopter Sword, right. or even like a Karn tutor package where you're like finding some combo with Karn, or I mean I think you have a lot more. Well, not that you didn't have options with Urza before, because there are still people out there playing and there are still people out there playing various flavors of Urza combo, but I think that's the direction it goes in now.
Were the Kethis decks playing Mox Amber? I like kind of don't remember. They were. So
you got it, right? Like it's a big part of your combo.
Now that deck loses Mox Opal, which is a big hit, but I do think it was functioning in Standard with worse cards than it has in Modern, so there's other cards. Is it
good enough for Modern without those cards, though, I think is the question.
Does Mox Opal being lost cost it its position in the format? I don't know. That's an interesting deck to look out for. As far as like artifact combo decks that people might be looking to play, Lantern being gone from Lantern losing Mox Opal, I also don't know how dead it is. Like I don't think it's obviously not good.
I don't think it's more dead.
Yeah. It was already dead, right? Like so there's just like a lot of decks out there that I think like are going to bounce back from this better than people think they will. And it's just they're going to be a little bit slower, but the format's going to hopefully be in a little bit of a healthier position.
Hope so.
Yeah.
I think one thing that if we're talking about a watch list is like impossible not to mention is that in the ban announcement they've been kind of announcing like, oh, we got our eye on this card, we got our eye on Opal, we got our eye on whatever, but this time they said that they have an eye on Walking Ballista Heliod combo.
Okay.
Which I think, did you not read the announcement?
No, I've been.
Oh, wow, you're tripping.
This is your job today.
So, so they have their eye on Walking Ballista Heliod
Tomorrow
combo.
I'll have read it.
Yeah, they said that they want to see how the meta adjusts to it and how it goes for Pioneer and Modern. And I do think that is potentially another indictment for Once Upon a Time, is that if there is a very good Walking Ballista Heliod combo deck, be it a Mono White Devotion build or a Collected Company or a whatever, Once Upon a Time is going to be such an like huge piece of that deck.
Unless it's Mono White, but sure.
Unless it's Mono White, but I think that Once Upon a Time makes me think that
it's White Green even with
maybe
Mono
you shouldn't be Mono White.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, because this is like such a small combo to fit into your thing, we could even see like a Blue White Control.
Oh yeah,
with Ballista
it's free
that plays
almost.
Heliod, or like an Urza deck with Ballista that plays Heliod, or like you just put Heliod into your deck that was already willing to play Walking Ballista. And we talked about last week. We talked about how this is maybe more of an issue in Pioneer, where like Ballista is like a top tier card that's getting played in a lot of decks just because it's like an efficient, colorless.
Sure.
Put it in any deck. Why not? That Heliod's like a little more dangerous in Pioneer as opposed to Modern, but like the combo's obviously good and Ballista is already a good card. Heliod, maybe not so much, but you could just jam him into something to search for, or
you can easily play him as a one-of. There's different ways to find enchantments and creatures.
Yeah.
There's also just the benefit of the fact that I do think that if he is coming down as a creature, which is why I do like the White Devotion idea more, he's much better, right? Because he's just an indestructible 5/5, right? For 3? Or is he 5/6? And so like Thassa has seen play in Modern, not a ton, but some, just off the back that a 3-mana 5/5 that can make things unblockable.
She was never going to randomly win the game out of nowhere.
Right,
so.
yeah. She doesn't have a whoops, I won button attached to her, where Heliod does. And so I think like that's why I do like the Mono White, kind of like Soul Sisters or Devotion lists. Because that's a deck that has been on the fringe of good forever. It's the only mono white deck to ever top 8 or win a GP.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, every mono color has won a GP other than mono black. Because Elves has one, Merfolk has one, Soul Sisters has one, and mono red has one.
It was mono green Elves at the time, pre-Shaman of the Pack.
Yeah, it was mono green before Shaman of the Pack. Or it may have had Shaman of the Pack, but it wasn't playing it for that reason, whatever reason, it wasn't playing it. And then mono red was Scred red. It wasn't Burn. Those are the 4, and then mono black has never won. So cool, one day. But you love Scred.
I do like Scred. I had something I was gonna say. Well.
Do we have any super chats to ask while you remember what you're going to say as the end of the video? I will say, someone brought up also that Karn is good against Birthing Pod.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Birthing Pod should come back. I think it doesn't do a whole lot, and it's such a fun card. That deck was never not fun. It just was good. And they banned it at a moment because they were banning the Delve cards, and it was good in the Delve era. It's kind of the same reason they actually banned Mycosynth Lattice here, right? So during the Delve era, Delve Fall, Birthing Pod was a tier 1 deck. It might have been one of the best decks in the format, even with Delve cards out there. And before the Delve era, the summer before that, it was the best deck. So when they were banning those cards right before Pro Tour, in an era where they wanted Pro Tours to be as exciting and different as possible, they didn't want everyone just to play Birthing Pod. So it was kind of banned back in the day for the diversity reasons than it was necessarily for purely is this card unfun to play against? Or does it hurt diversity in the format? It's not like OKO there are any OKO decks.
Well, they left Pod around for years and years, and it kind of took them a long time to be it was hard for us to determine that this card was the problem, but we did. And I think by the same token, it's easy to be well, that card wasn't really the problem, but they watched it for a long time and were making sure that it's looking at its win rate, looking at its play rate amongst.
Well, but sometimes cards are problems because the answers for them are bad, right? In that era, what main deckable artifact hate was played? Kozali Pride Mage.
Yeah,
that's it. And it was in the Birthing Pod list. I guess the Birthing Pod list had sideboard. We're playing those slivers, the artifact ones that are dope.
Harmonic Sliver.
Harmonic Sliver.
Yeah, Reclamation Sage.
Yeah. I mean, now you have Night of Autumn. I think there's so many answers that it'd be worth it. But I don't think I think they're getting rid of cards before they're unbanning cards at this point. Maybe. I mean, people were arguing for Ponder to be unbanned 2 days ago.
But that's the thing is I think the meta is so degenerate. Ponder would be totally fine is a little not where I want it to be at, right? I would prefer that the format be in a place where Ponder's too good.
Sure, and I'm not arguing that the format's so degenerate that Birthing Pod is what I'm saying, that the format has ways to deal with Birthing Pod that it didn't before.
Sure, I'm just the argument that I saw for Ponder is well, you get to play frickin' Urza and Primeval Titan decks. What's Ponder even gonna do? I don't think that I'm on board with that because I would prefer for things not to be so busted that you could just give a bunch of combo decks that consistency.
Sure. How good do you think Stoneforge Mystic is going to be now that OKO and these cards are gone? I think it's not good still.
Yeah, I don't think it's that good still.
Yeah.
I mean, Stoneforge Mystic will continue to show up here and there in mid-range decks where it's I'm a mid-range deck. I'm interested in generating a little value, maybe having a toolbox. I'm gonna play Stoneforge Mystic. The same as kind of before, where sometimes you'll see a Mardu Death Shadow just throwing a Stoneforge package, or there'll be a green-based Eldrazi deck that's oh, why not throw in Stoneforge? We had green-white Eldrazi before. Eldrazi in particular are kind of hosed by OKO because
and now that Urza is going back to the combo, it could start either going to play Goblin Engineer again or playing Stoneforge Mystic to find those pieces, right? That's a different solution for the deck. It replacing the Okos in the Urza deck, I think is something that could happen because it is looking for equipment.
Sure, yeah. If Urza goes back to the Thopter Sword, then yeah.
And then the other card that I wanted to ask about if it was going to see play before we finish up the episode is. We talked about Birthing Pod. We talked about Stoneforge Mystic. Jund players. That's a deck I'd invest in. I mean, I know that you are on the train of Jund is always bad, but there's always one player that's going to do well with it.
I don't think Jund is always bad, but I think that the reason it top 8'd is not an indication of the metagame. I think it's I would guess, knowing nothing about that player, and maybe I'm going to be corrected, I would guess that player is probably a longtime Jund player, probably owns the deck foiled out, just loves playing that deck. And they played it at a GP, and they're the modern dream, right? Where it's I play this deck at FNMs and I clean up, and I just I really love this deck. It's really important to me, and I'm going to take it to a GP, and I'm going to top 8. Right?
And
with the deck that I love. I don't think it was a meta call where that guy was like, you know what? I usually play Primeval Titan, but actually Jund is the right call for this tournament.
Sure.
I'm audibling to Jund. I'm going to get good with it, and I'm in top 8 because it's the right call. I think that that's just a deck that he cares for and is good with.
I'm recommending to be that. So my statement is, well, because remember, a lot of people are hurting right now because they just lost $400 for Mox Opal because they've had that card for 10 years. They've been playing it consistently. They either have Affinity, and then they've audibled the Hardened Scales, and they audibled into Urza because those pieces came out kind of slowly and are easy to interchange. But there is an interest, especially for players, to find a deck that I can just stick to forever, right? Jund is always going to be fine.
We said the same thing about Death Shadow. I think I advocate Death Shadow.
Okay, between the two, yeah. So I think that's fair. It's just,
but yes, playing a mid-range deck is always going to be relatively safe because you're not doing anything broken.
Right.
And if they ban a piece out of your deck, you just put in a different similar piece. Right. And Death Shadow in particular, I think that the deck changes a lot with no Death Shadow as opposed to Jund. If they ban Tarmogoyf, you're whatever. I play some other green.
Even if they ban Red and 6, you just.
Yeah, Red and 6. I don't
Dark Confidant was good enough, right?
I think that.
Michael is also a Jund hater, so take everything he's taking with a sliver of Jund hate.
It's fine. I mean, I think playing Jund is fun. I Death Shadow just does it better,
But Jund beats Death Shadow.
Rock, paper, scissors, I guess.
Yeah. And Thoughtseize seems pretty decent. I mean, yeah, I'm interested to see what the metagame looks like. Thank you, everyone who tuned in for the chat. This has been an MMcast emergency ban hot take. The ban wasn't an emergency. The hot take was an emergency. Ban emergency hot take? I don't know. You can find us on...
emergency hot take. Yeah.
Yeah, we will have a full episode tomorrow. Don't worry, it'll be the two of us. We have a special guest. We will be talking about bannings. We'll be talking about Theros. We'll be talking about kind of the financial implications of both. And I'll have read the announcement. If you want to find us, I'm at Kess Wiley.
I'm at Dudard, Dudardd.
On pretty much everything.
Mine's only on Twitter.
He's only on Twitter. He doesn't even have an Instagram.
I don't have an Instagram.
I post things on Instagram that his wife will maybe see and then tell him about. And that's my goal generally.
Wow.
Yeah. I tag your wife when I need to get to you. I used to do that to my wife's mom. I used to tag her dad because he had an Instagram and she didn't. But now she has one. So you just got to get an Instagram. It's time, Michael. You can follow us on Twitch. The podcast is the MMcast. My personal one, and we accidentally streamed it to this day, is /Kesko. Obviously, the YouTube channel is the best place to find us. Please if you're on YouTube right now. The likes really matter. And subscribe and hit the little bell button so you get alerted when we go live. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Normally we release hot takes every Monday. Every Thursday is when the edited version of the video comes out with card art and everything. And then every Tuesday is when we do a live stream, other than when there's ban announcements and we decide we need to do an emergency live episode. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow or next week.